It began with a creak, soft, slow, like an old tree bending in the wind. Then came the whisper of footsteps, too light to be human, padding gently across the wooden floors. Outside, the world slept beneath a blanket of stars, but inside the little blue house on Lavender Hill, something had awakened. A lamp flickered in the hallway, though no one had touched it. The curtains swayed, though the windows were shut tight. In the silence of midnight, the house stretched its beams and hummed in its bones, as if taking a long, dreamy breath. From the room at the top of the stairs, Leo's eyes opened. He hadn't heard the sound, he had felt it, like a shimmer in the air. Something was different tonight. The floor beneath his bed had a heartbeat. The walls around him seemed to listen. Next door, his little sister Nia turned in her sleep. Her nightlight glowed soft and golden beside her bed, shaped like a castle tower. Leo sat up, his blanket slipping to the floor. The room was quiet again, too quiet. Even the old grandfather clock had paused its ticking. Then came a gentle knock, not on the door, but from within the wall, a soft tapping, like fingers drumming on wood. Once, twice, 3 times, Leo held his breath. He wasn't afraid, not exactly. It felt like the house was calling. Downstairs, the staircase gave a little sigh, and a cupboard door clicked open on its own. As the moonlight poured through the hallway like spilled milk, the house gave a small chuckle. Yes, a real chuckle, and Leo knew one thing for sure. Their house could talk, but only at night. And tonight, it had something to say. The next morning, nothing seemed unusual. The sunlight poured through the windows in golden ribbons, and the floorboards were just floorboards again. No creaks, no whispers, only the sounds of toast popping and spoons clinking in cereal bowls. Leo watched the house closely as he buttered his toast. The windows blinked with sunlight, the kitchen clock ticked normally, and the cupboard that had clicked open by itself the night before now sat shut and silent. Nia babbled about her dreams, flying elephants, and a jellybean forest while their parents sipped tea, talking about the weekend. No one else had heard the laughter in the walls. No one else had felt the thump of a heartbeat in the floor. But Leo had. That night, as the moon crept up once more, and the shadows began to stretch long and lazy across the hallway, Leo stayed awake. He lay still, pretending to sleep, blanket tucked under his chin. Hours passed. The clock downstairs ticked. The air grew quieter and cooler. Then, at exactly midnight, the house yawned. Not a sound that came from a person, but a yawning stretch of wood and stone groaning just slightly, as if waking from a long nap. The lamp in the hallway flickered. A soft wind brushed under his door. Leo sat up slowly, his eyes wide in the dark. The knock came again, 3 taps in the wall, just like before. This time, Leo whispered into the air. He asked, "Who's there?" No voice answered, but the wallpaper near his dresser rippled gently, like water in a pond. And then, from the tiny keyhole of his closet, a stream of golden dust puffed into the room. It curled in the air like smoke, then vanished. The floorboards gave a small sigh. The room tilted just slightly, as if the house had leaned closer to listen. Leo stood, stepping quietly across the room. The doorknob to the hallway felt warm in his hand. As he opened it, a hush fell across the house. Even the wind outside had stopped. Nia's door creaked open at the same time, though she hadn't touched it. She stood in the hallway in her pink pajamas, rubbing her eyes. She asked, "Did you hear it too?" Leo nodded. Without a word, the two tiptoed downstairs. The house shifted around them ever so gently. Pictures on the wall turned slightly as they passed. The stairs hummed beneath their feet, not in warning, but in welcome. In the kitchen, the cupboard that had opened the night before was wide again. Inside, where there had once been cereal and mugs, was now a tunnel. A tunnel made of wood and light, lined with silver ivy and glowing blue mushrooms. Leo's heart thudded. He reached for Nia's hand. The house wanted to show them something. They stepped inside. The tunnels spiraled downward, cool and quiet. The deeper they went, the more the air shimmered. The walls changed from wood to stone to something that looked like starlight, twinkling with tiny sparkles. Nia gasped in wonder, her small fingers gripping Leo's tightly. At the end of the tunnel, they stepped into a room so large and strange it made them stop and stare. It looked like the inside of a heart, but not a real one, a magical one. The walls pulsed softly, with color lavender, blue, gold. Floating in the air were whispers, actual, visible whispers, little ribbons of light curling around them like speech made of wind. And in the center stood a tall, crooked chair. It wasn't empty. In it sat an old man with wooden skin and windowpane eyes. His beard was made of vines, and his voice came not from his mouth, but from the walls around him. He said he was the heart of the house. Long ago, he explained. The house had been built, not with bricks alone, but with a wish. A wish for shelter, warmth, and stories. That wish had grown into something alive, something kind. And for many years, the house had watched over its families, whispering small hints, nudging lost toys into corners, keeping doors from slamming when little ones slept. But lately, the house had begun to worry. He said something was changing. A door had been left open, one that should never be opened. He spoke of a crack, deep in the cellar, where a cold wind had begun to seep through, and with that wind came silence, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that made the walls ache and the lights flicker in fear. Leo asked what the house needed. The wooden man looked at them with eyes like frosted windows. He said the house needed listeners. Someone to understand its creaks and whispers. Someone to mend the crack before the silence grew too loud. Leo felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. He was just a boy. Nia was only 6. But he also knew he had been chosen. He promised to listen. The wooden man smiled, and the walls around them glowed brighter. A warm breeze swirled around the room, and the whispers lifted like dandelion seeds, brushing their cheeks. Then the tunnel behind them shifted again, turning into a staircase that led back to the kitchen. As they climbed, Leo noticed small changes. The wooden railing felt smoother, warmer. The wallpaper in the hallway glowed faintly, with golden patterns like messages hidden in plain sight. The next morning, Leo and Nia awoke in their beds. Had it been a dream, but when Leo checked the cupboard, the cereal boxes were back, but the corner of the shelf still shimmered faintly. That afternoon, when they helped their father fetch tools from the basement, Leo saw it. A long, thin crack in the far wall. Cold air slipped through it, carrying with it a silence that didn't belong. Nia stepped closer, her brow furrowed. She pointed to the crack and whispered, "That's where it starts." Leo nodded. He could feel it too. That night, they stayed up again. At midnight, the house yawned. They followed the sound of the creaks, the flicker of the lights, and once again found the tunnel open. This time, the wooden man was not alone. A bird made of paper flapped above him, leaving trails of glowing letters in the air. A cat with curtains for fur purred at his feet. He welcomed them back, then showed them something new. A map. It was a map of the house, not just the rooms, but the feelings inside them. Sadness in the attic, joy in the kitchen, quiet bravery in the hallway where Nia had once stood up to a spider. And the crack? It was growing. Not because of anything evil, the man said, but because houses, like hearts, sometimes break a little. They forget how to speak. They grow lonely. He told them that the only way to heal the house was through care, through memories, laughter, and small acts of kindness. Leo and Nia listened closely. They asked what they should do, and the house answered. That week, they painted pictures on the basement walls, bright suns, dancing animals, stars with smiling faces. They told stories in the attic. They built a reading fort in the hallway. They baked cookies and left one on every windowsill. And every night, the house whispered, "Thank you." But one night, something changed again. Leo was brushing his teeth when the mirror shimmered. In it, instead of his own reflection, he saw the basement crack widen. Cold wind whooshed out, and for the first time, he heard the silence speak. It said one word. Empty. Leo ran to Nia's room. She was already awake, her eyes wide. The house was scared. And the crack, it was almost too wide to mend. They had to do something more, something big, something brave. The wind in the hallway had changed. It no longer whispered kindly or tickled the curtains. Now, it pushed. It pressed against the doors and howled through the vents like something trying to escape or enter. The crack in the basement wall had split wider, and the cold silence spilling from it now crawled into every corner of the house. The pictures on the walls drooped. The lights flickered without rhythm. Even the floorboards, once warm and whispering, had gone still and stiff. The house was afraid. Leo could feel it in his chest, tight like holding in a breath. Nia, small but fierce, stood at the top of the stairs with her stuffed lion tucked under her arm, listening. The house no longer yawned at midnight. Now it trembled. The wooden man hadn't appeared in 2 nights. Leo didn't know if that meant the heart of the house had grown too weak or too far away. But he knew one thing: they couldn't wait any longer. It was time to face the crack. That night, when the last tick of the grandfather clock struck 12, Leo and Nia tiptoed into the kitchen. The tunnel in the cupboard was gone, replaced once more by mugs and cereal boxes. But the basement door, it stood open. Not creaked, not swung. It stood wide, as if waiting. Down the stairs they went, flashlights in hand, feet careful not to wake the shadows. The basement air felt colder than before, damp and heavy like a wet blanket. The crack stretched along the far wall, no longer a line, but a jagged mouth. From it poured not just wind, but a darkness that shimmered like ink and moved like smoke. Leo took a step forward. The air around the crack pulled back, like it sensed him. A low, rumbling hush filled the room, not a growl, not a voice, something in between. Nia squeezed Leo's hand tighter. She whispered that the house was listening, even now. Leo nodded. And then, the floor beneath their feet shifted. The wall cracked further, and from the darkness stepped something tall and hollow. It had no face, only a shape, a shifting figure made of dust and forgotten dreams, with fingers like broken beams and a chest that echoed when it moved. It wasn't a monster, not exactly. But it was made of everything the house feared: loneliness, silence, and emptiness. Leo wanted to run. Every part of him screamed to go back upstairs, to pull the blankets over his head and pretend none of this was real. But he didn't. Instead, he stepped forward. He told the emptiness what the wooden man had said: that the house was built with love and warmth, not silence, that it wasn't alone, not anymore. The emptiness swayed. Its form shifted, flickering between shadow and shape. Nia stepped forward too. She pulled her stuffed lion from her arm and held it out. She said the lion was brave, and the house could be brave too. The emptiness froze. Then slowly it reached out a hand, not sharp, not quick, just trembling like a leaf. It touched the lion gently. And when it did, something changed. The lion began to glow, faintly at first, then brighter. Light poured from its stitched eyes and soft paws, spilling warmth across the floor. The emptiness jerked back, but not in pain, in wonder. The shadows in the room began to thin. The crack in the wall pulsed. Leo took another step and reached into his pocket. He pulled out a marble. It was his favorite one, clear with a swirl of blue, the kind he'd kept since he was 4. He rolled it across the floor. He said it was a memory of sunlight on the porch, of laughter in the kitchen, of the house keeping him safe when he was sick. The marble glowed too. The crack hissed. From the top of the stairs came a sound, soft at first, then rising, a hum. The walls joined in. The ceiling beams groaned. The floorboards began to tap, one after another, like a heartbeat returning. The house was waking up, but the emptiness wasn't leaving. It trembled, confused, caught between its fear and the light it didn't understand. Then Leo did something even braver. He stepped forward and hugged it. The figure made of dust and fear stood frozen. Then, slowly, it wrapped long, gentle arms around Leo in return. And as it did, the crack in the wall closed. Not all at once, but in slow, careful pieces. The wind stopped. The darkness faded. The basement light flickered once, then glowed steady. And in the silence that followed, the house gave a sound that could only be described as a sigh of relief. The wooden man appeared beside them, looking thinner, but smiling. His beard of vines glistened with morning dew. He said they had reminded the house what it meant to be full of life, full of courage, full of love. The emptiness had not been evil, just forgotten. And now, it had been remembered. Leo and Nia climbed the stairs, the wooden man fading behind them like morning mist. The kitchen was warm again. The pictures on the wall had straightened. The lights no longer flickered. And outside, the sun was rising. The house didn't speak again that morning. It didn't need to. Its message was already clear. And Leo knew so long as someone listened, the house would never fall silent again. The sun rose slowly over Lavender Hill, casting golden light across the quiet neighborhood. The little blue house stood still at first, as if unsure the long night had truly passed. Then, with a soft groan of its beams, and a hush of warm air through its vents, it stretched into the new day, calm and safe once more. Inside, Leo sat on the stairs, hugging his knees and watching the sunlight creep across the floorboards. Nia leaned against the banister beside him, her stuffed lion tucked tightly under one arm. Neither of them spoke, they just listened. And the house breathed. It didn't whisper urgently like it had before. It didn't creak in warning or knock with worry. It simply hummed, a quiet, sleepy hum, like the gentle snoring of someone wrapped in a favorite blanket. Their parents moved about the kitchen, completely unaware. Toast popped, the kettle sang. Their father laughed at something on the radio. To them, it was just a regular morning in their cozy home. But Leo and Nia knew better. The crack in the basement wall was gone now. The shadows had lifted. The wooden man in the chair with the window pane eyes hadn't come back. But his warmth lingered in the corners of every room. And the emptiness, the cold silence that had once tried to swallow the house, was no longer a presence at all. It had become part of the story, part of the house's memory. That night, Leo stayed up long after bedtime. He didn't feel afraid anymore. He felt curious. Midnight came and went, and instead of a creaking tunnel or a glowing mushroom path, there was a different kind of magic. The house blinked its windows just once, as if winking. Leo tiptoed into the hallway, where the cupboard door stood slightly ajar. He opened it fully, but there was no tunnel this time. Instead, inside the cupboard, resting atop the cereal boxes, sat a small wooden box. It hadn't been there before. He opened it carefully, and inside he found treasures. His old drawing of a dragon and a castle, the one he had made when he was 5. Nia's missing blue hair clip with the chipped paint. A pebble from the garden shaped like a heart. And something else, a single button from their mother's favorite sweater, the one she always wore on rainy days. Each object glowed gently, like tiny memories wrapped in light. Leo's throat tightened. The house hadn't just protected them, it had remembered them. He went to get Nia, who followed him back in her pajamas and bunny slippers, eyes wide with wonder. Together, they placed their own treasures inside the box, a smooth, shiny marble Leo had kept in his desk drawer for years. A crayon drawing of the house, complete with smiling windows and waving trees. A feather Nia had found on the porch and insisted came from a skybird. The box gave off a faint hum, almost like a purr. They closed it and placed it gently back inside the cupboard. From that night on, the cupboard became their secret place, a place for the house's heart, where memories could rest and love could be left behind like footprints in soft dirt. Every few weeks, the box would change, sometimes returning old memories and sometimes offering new ones they didn't even remember losing. The house had become a storyteller, sharing their laughter, their drawings, their whispered wishes. Sometimes it offered dreams, too. On quiet nights, when wind pressed gently against the windows and the stars were clear and blinking above, Leo and Nia would wake with memories they couldn't explain of long wooden staircases that led into clouds, of kitchens that sang lullabies, of basements that glowed with warmth instead of fear. The wooden man never appeared again, at least not in the same way. But every now and then, they would catch glimpses of flicker in a mirror, a shadow that looked too much like a chair for it to be nothing, or a ripple in the air that tasted like old stories. And Leo began to write. It started with scribbles in a notebook, pictures of the heart room, sketches of the glowing mushrooms, and the paper bird that left trails of letters. Nia added her own drawings, one of the house, with arms wrapping around the children who lived inside, another of the crack in the wall mended by strings of light. They named the notebook The House of Midnight Whispers. Inside it, they recorded every creak, every flicker, every dream that felt like more than a dream. It became a map of everything they had felt, seen, and saved. They hid the notebook in the cupboard, beside the memory box, trusting the house to keep it safe. Years passed, like pages turning in a gentle breeze. The house stood through every season, humming in summer, sighing in winter, glowing quietly through stormy springs and sleepy autumns. It never whispered in fear again, only in comfort. When Leo scraped his knee, the house flickered its hallway lamp to light the way to the bathroom. When Nia cried one night over a lost toy, the house guided her hand to the place behind the couch where it had rolled. When their father got sick for a few days, the house warmed the kitchen just a little more, as if offering its strength in tea and sunlight. And the house continued to speak, but only at night, and only to those who listened. Eventually, the time came when Leo and Nia were no longer little. They didn't play in the attic as often, or build forts in the hallway. Leo went away to school. Nia took piano lessons and spent more time with friends. The stuffed lion sat on a shelf now, watching over her quietly. But on the nights they came back to visit, the house always remembered. The stairs hummed, the cupboard creaked open, the memory box shined a little brighter. And one evening, long after bedtime, a new sound echoed gently through the house, the small, soft steps of another child. A new family had moved in. Leo and Nia, both older now, came back to visit one last time before the boxes were packed. They stood together in the hallway, looking at the freshly painted walls and the cleaned-out rooms. It didn't feel sad. It felt like the end of a very good story, and the beginning of another. Leo reached into the cupboard and placed the notebook, The House of Midnight Whispers, gently into the memory box. Then he whispered into the air. He told the house it had done a good job, that it had been brave, that it had been loved. The house creaked once, warmly. And as the children left now, no longer children, the house stood proud and ready. That night, long after midnight, the new child woke to a strange feeling in their chest. A heartbeat in the floor, a rustle in the curtain, a soft creak near the cupboard. The child sat up, blinking into the dark, and the house, ever gentle, ever watchful, gave a little sigh. It was ready to speak again, because the house could talk, but only at night. And now, someone new was listening.